moving on to item number 5, the minutes from the June 1st and June 21st meeting. Did anyone have any corrections? I entertain a motion for approval.
Move approval as presented.
Second.
Second, that's moved by Mr. Miglerino, seconded by Mr. Ramirez. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, moving on to summary of current events. We will start with our new superintendent, Dr. Spurgeon. In the 13 days that you've been here, we expect a lengthy report.
Lengthy. Thank you, Chairman Straka. So early in June, prior to our last meeting, we've had several summer camps at each of our sites. We've also hosted Skills Nationals. We've hosted the HOSA Nationals, and we've also hosted the FBLA Nationals. And we'll have the results of those when they're available at a later date. But Rashawn and Team West-MEC put on a very successful summer event, and all campuses participated with over about 200 students registered for the summer school program from 30 different schools. Pendergrass School District supported Central Campus by paying for all 70 of their students for 60 programming hours. To hear some testimonials from the students that attended summer camp, which is always great to hear from the students. One student said they can't wait to go to West-MEC. Another student says, I know why I want to go to school. The last student said, I've never built anything in my life, and now I just did. So my hat's off to those who hosted a tremendously successful summer school. We hope to make that even greater experience for students next summer. Coming up in July, as you well know, the ACTAZ Summer Conference is coming up July 15th through the 20th. I believe Mr. Kaldenbach is attending that with a number of West-MEC staff members. On the week of the 25th, we've moved from an all staff meeting to, I wanted to make it more personal. So I'm meeting with each individual staff at each individual site, starting that week, one in the morning, one in the afternoon of the 25th, morning and the afternoon of the 26th, and then the afternoon of the 27th. So you're more than welcome to attend any or all of those. Just let Dee know and she'll let you know what time and where those locations will be. We'd love to have you attend one of those if you can. New student orientation. That just seems like school got out and now all of a sudden we're back at it again. But the end of July, starting on the 26th through the 28th, we'll have new student orientation going on our campus. So that's exciting. Some personal things that I want to make you aware of. I attended my first brand new to Arizona superintendent collaborative network meeting last Wednesday. Got a chance to meet several mentors and also some new superintendents around the area. Got a chance to meet Dr. BB, superintendent down at Buckeye, and he invited me to come down and meet his staff today. So I drove down to Buckeye, which I didn't think was that far, but it's about 27 miles. And a lot of farmland. So I drove out and met all of their high school staff from all 3 high schools and their CTE folks, and got a chance to continue to build on that relationship. And they're very excited about the work that they do with West-MEC and look to some potential expansions in the future. So very excited about that one. I got a chance to speak to our 15th cohort in the aviation program. Adult learners that kicked off last Wednesday. Got a chance to introduce myself and welcome them to the program and talk about their 2.5 years that they need to stay with it and be persevering individuals. And we want to see each and every one of their faces that are sitting in that room today, 2.5 years from now, walking across with their certification moving forward. So I attended the first, it's called a fast forward session. You're probably more aware of it than I am, but it's where we bring students, allow them to come in and we teach them career skills. There were about 22 or 23 students on the Northwest campus, where we taught them skills as resume writing, references, applications completion, tips and techniques on how to interview, how to communicate with the interviewers. And that was a great session. I stayed for about 50 minutes there. So one of the things that I talk with the individuals about is at some point in time, I hope that we measure the effectiveness of how well that goes with our students. So how many students who enter the program that go through that training actually end up being placed by our career services versus maybe the students who didn't have that training and may not be as successful. So hoping to maybe track some of that data as well. Got a chance to attend my first legislative update with West-MEC this yesterday morning. There were 9 state legislators there, and there was 8 representatives and 1 senator. Got a chance to meet 4 of them, got the cards of 3, and I'm setting up meetings to meet with those individuals to begin to develop the relationships that we have here at West-MEC, and also let them know all the great things that we do here and some great things they can help us do even better in the future. I participated in my first all administrators meeting this morning from 9 until 12. So I got a chance to see that structure. I got a chance to visit with the building principals and talk about strategic planning, opening of school, new learning systems, teacher evaluations, and all those great things that happened during the first of the school year that coming on. And other than that, I've been learning the names of streets and places to shop and where to buy food and different things like that. But as I said, when I first came in May, it's a great day to be at West-MEC. This is a phenomenal place, and to have met some just tremendous professionals that work here and our partner district. So.
Thanks. Turning it over to the board. Any current events or updates?
I'll be attending the conference next week.
Very good.
Also, next week will be the ASBO conference in Tucson, and we'll be doing a fundraising for CTE scholarships again, which I always love it when our kids can get a little help, get that license for cosmetology or airline mechanic or whatever. So that, I know there's the ACTE, and then there's also ASBO. So next week will be a busy week.
And that reminds me, Chairman Strickland, we also talked about how, as you know, the Super Bowl comes in 2023, and there's a fundraising opportunity for us with parking and things like that. And so we're working through what that might look like for some of our CTSOs, how that might be a benefit. So
I think one of the CTSOs did that last time, did they, Jack?
about 5 years.
Yeah.
Last one.
Was it 5 years ago?
But that time we didn't have the 5-acre property. Now that we have, they're available now, which could be even a better opportunity.
A little shuttle bus or something.
Yeah, we talked, they put a gator out there, one of them as well. So that's coming. So we're just trying to plan for that big event.
All right, anything else, anybody? All right, moving on to the consent agenda. Not open for discussion. Does anyone want anything pulled from the consent agenda?
Yes,
Like, Ms. Wiley?
F and G.
F and G. All right. Anybody else? Yes.
I move we approve the consent agenda minus items F and G.
Is there a second? Good. All right. All in favor, say aye.
Right?
Any opposed? All right, so we have approved all the way to E. We will open discussion for item F and then G. Ms. Wiley, would you like to, your concern or questions?
I started to digest this. Yeah. I know I have a lot of questions, and I don't know if I just need to meet with Stephen, or if we want to do a presentation or what. I do have questions.
So can you give us some of the questions and then we can decide how we want to proceed?
The details of what they're requiring in this looks to me, and I'm not a teacher, but I know they just passed some legislation and you don't even have to be a certified teacher to teach. So there's things that are changing out that area. And I don't know that all of it may not be as big as I think it is, but it just looked like an awful lot of details that a new person that comes from industry has to absorb.
Mr. Chair?
Dr. Pingarelli?
Yeah, interestingly, I have a question on this too. Legislation was recently signed by the governor. I believe it was Senate Bill 1159 with regard to teacher certification and changes and requirements. And that was a major piece of legislation. I'm not sure how directly it impacts CTE, but I would like to really, before approving this, would like to know from Mr. Welsh and staff how this might modify our program. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Welsh, could you, how evaluation changed based on state law?
Sure. Thank you for the question, Chairperson Straka, governing board members, Superintendent Spurgeon. So a couple different issues. What you're talking about, Dr. Pingarelli, with certification for teachers is a separate issue than teacher evaluation. Indeed, the governor and state legislature made some changes that makes teaching in our classrooms a little more accessible. In career and technical education, we have largely already operated under some of what was just passed in career and technical education, regardless of degree or teacher credentials. Somebody who's had 5 years of industry experience has been able to come into a classroom. So the majority of our teachers have already benefited from that. And most of our teachers have not come from a teacher preparatory program. They've come with industry experience. So what has happened now with teacher credentialing is that same avenue is open to multiple teachers now. So an English teacher, for instance, might be coming because that teacher has been doing, editing of technical documents, for instance, might come into the classroom, whereas in the past they weren't able to come into the classroom without going through a teacher preparatory program. In career and technical education, again, we've kind of been doing that for a long time. So that remains the same as far as teacher credentials. Separate from that is teacher evaluation. And to governing board member Wiley's point, yeah, absolutely. It is it's a robust document. So still in statute, we are required to follow what at the time was Danielson's domains, but we had to kind of follow this rubrics of domains. So what you see there is largely required by statute. We've gone in and customized it to include CTE language. So throughout the domains, you're going to see language about not just a classroom, but about a laboratory, or about making sure that they've infused hands-on learning into the learning environment, that they're working with business and industry. So what we know is the delivery model, all those components of effective career and technical education have been embedded into these rubrics. But the rubrics, at least those first 4 domains that are in the instrument that's in front of you, are what's embedded into legislation that school districts are following. We've added 2 additional domains, which would include CTSOs, that teachers are operating and functioning CTSOs. You heard at the beginning of the evening with Dr. Spurgeon's comments, we celebrated lots of students going to nationals, and that's an area where our teachers feel comfortable. It's a lot of work, but our teachers feel success and are doing well in the evaluation cycle, as well as work-based learning, getting teachers to work with industry partners to set up job shadowing, guest speakers, internships, those types of things, which we've talked to you all about before, is in that other domain as well. So we agree it's a robust document. We do very much work with teachers. We have a 5-year induction program. So because so many of our teachers come in without that language, without that technical language, we have this 5-year induction program that takes them through understanding that language, and our principals do a great job of kind of, piecing them through these rubrics and understanding it. In addition, we have coaches assigned to all of our new teachers. So when a teacher is in a teacher induction program for those first 5 years, they have a coach that comes alongside them to work with them and help them through understanding the expectations and these tools.
Okay. Mr. Welch, this is largely the same thing every teacher in the whole state goes through. I have to go through pretty much the same thing. Maybe you could address 2 things. Number one, has any of this changed from the last 10 that we've approved? And number 2, also explain how this is tied to their 301 money.
Thank you. Good questions. Absolutely, because it is by state statute required that we follow the Danielson domains. This is something all teachers throughout Arizona are experiencing. So this is very common. This has been in place now for, goodness, probably about 7 years, I think we've been using this rubric. So this instrument has been largely the same, other than the tweaking I talked about CTE language. The legislators created, there's the statute that we have to use, rubrics. We were able to choose rubrics from either Charlotte Danielson or Marzano in creating the system.
A lot of this is best practice kind of stuff that, and especially in West-MEC where we have, well, we have industry converts, right? So that aren't from education backgrounds. Then this is a really good handbook of this is our expectations and then how do you get to that place. And this is why we have instructional assistants on all of our campuses, right? That help new teachers through all of this. It is daunting, but
Well,
mean,
it
it-
is, okay, because I'm looking at it and thinking, okay,
yeah,
I'm one of those that's coming in from the outside. And you know what I would say if I saw this?
yeah. But this is what every teacher in Arizona is going through.
Well, that's what you're telling me. It's
Yeah.
like, this is crazy.
And we have to approve it. And more importantly, we have to approve the list of people who are approved
How much
evaluators.
time do you spend doing this? Is it productive?
It is productive, and I'd invite any one of our principals to join me as well. It is a lot, but so much of it is embedded in what they do. So as our teachers go through instructional practices, for instance, and they learn teacher techniques and teacher strategies, they're doing that every day. And principals come in through observations, walkthroughs, they see this, they're able to give teachers feedback. The system itself for most of our teachers includes 2 cycles, one in the fall, one in the spring. So a principal would have a pre-conference with the teacher, ask about, what are your goals? What are students going to learn that day? How are you going to be, get there? How are you going to know that that was successful? Then the principal watches instruction, sits through a class, enjoys that instruction, and then kind of has a reflective conversation
Now, what
afterwards.
you're saying all makes sense.
Mhm.
That's logical.
And the rubric simply allows, kind of guides that dialogue and questions, but they're not going, like line by line, spending hours and hours on it. But it is a thoughtful process that guides that reflection within our teachers.
Then there's a tie to 301, if you want to talk about the tie to 301.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Spurgeon. And then this does relate with 301. So, in Arizona, we have performance pay for our teachers, and depending on teachers' performance on these domains, they get certain money tied into 301. Last month is when we approved 301, but for their performance of these domains, if they participate in CTSOs, if they participate in work-based learning, those types of things are then supported through 301 as well. So because it is some extra work and daunting, it's built into our performance pay system as well.
So you have taken this and adapted it to West-MEC's needs.
Yes,
While
now,
still trying to stay within the law.
absolutely. Now, if the legislature allowed us to, even streamline it more and make, a little less of the rubrics, that's certainly something that would be invited.
I won't say what I would like to say.
Barbara,
Okay.
just remember my old story. You never tell people how they make sausage or laws. You should have
My
known.
question would be, we've had a lot of teacher turnover, especially first, second year. Have we done any surveys on how effective teachers feel like they're getting the support they need and how effective these documents are? Because what I'm afraid of is we have these documents, we have things in place, but are they working? And do we have any metrics to show that they're working?
And basically, are they overboard? I mean, do they scare them? Are they helping them? I mean, we gotta help them become teachers. I get that. But if it's daunting,
But
they may
do they feel
just
like
throw
we're
it up
helping
in the
them?
air and go.
I guess my question is, your question is, do our new teachers in year 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 feel like they're getting the help, or do they feel like it's daunting? And what does the survey results say?
It's a great question. Absolutely, we
We
do.
want teachers, so
Yep.
I want to do everything that I need to do to get them in the door and to keep them here.
I believe we have people that do that just work with our teachers.
We do, and so we do engage teachers with both a formal survey as well as informal survey through the conversations with their coaches on an annual basis, revising the Teacher Induction Academy program on an annual basis. So as a matter of fact, we just spent this last year really digging into this and working with teachers, working with our school leaders on this very question. And it ended in us growing. The Teacher Academy used to be 3 years, but it was daunting. Teachers just said, hey, it is too much for me to learn this in 3 years. I need longer. So we've stretched it to 5 years. So beginning this year, we're now in a 5-year model. So our new teachers this year, instead of fitting everything into 3 years, they're gonna be fitting it into 5 years, and they'll have a coach with them hand in hand for that 5-year period instead of a 3-year period. That was completely based on teacher feedback and input, as well as our school leaders saying, hey, you know, we need a little more time to take a bite of this out.
Oh, I like that, of course, they're going from 3 to 5, but I still,
I would remind the board members that one of the reasons this effort, in addition to a whole bunch of other efforts, is one of the reasons why we were able to score so high on the Cognia surveys and all of that kind of stuff. And when we, at the end of the year, if you were at the graduations, recognition ceremonies, I'm always gonna screw that up. If you were there and you watched the videos of the kids saying, my teacher's awesome, there's two parts to that. There's part is that we have awesome people who are here for the right reasons, but we have awesome programs, and one of the reasons we have awesome programs is because of documents like this, so that every teacher that comes into our school knows that these are the expectations, this is what I want to do, and then we have all kinds of supports. I will tell you that the West-MEC model is being mirrored by school districts all over the state. When we were doing the video stuff with the Navajo reservation, this is the kind of stuff that we were teaching them how to do. Does that make sense?
yeah.
So
Okay, so this doesn't scare them off.
well, it does. It's hard. This is a big part of my life. I have to work at this. This is effort, but it's not unwarranted effort, you know, like when you sign a title, there's all kinds of laws and rules you have to follow. Do you pull that book out and read through the whole thing the whole time, every time? No, but there's a couple points where you're like, oh, I really gotta make sure, but it's all written down.
So that's the same thing.
So that's kind of what this idea is.
It's very much job embedded, as they do their work each and every day, which is a big job. They are hitting these things.
I guess, so my question would be things like, the Danielson framework. If I'm new to teaching, that's just 2 words. It means nothing to me. And so what I'm worried about is, are we making sure we don't make assumptions that everybody knows what all this stuff is? Because that's one of the big disconnects the board has had with presentations from staff, is we make assumptions that we're in the day-to-day and we're not. And so that's my question. Have we measured that in the surveys?
Yeah, thank you, Chairperson Strack. Absolutely. As a matter of fact, if you talk to any of our teachers, I don't think they would even have ever heard Danielson. That name, unless you're into education research, that name really doesn't mean anything to you. Instead, we talk to our teachers about this is what effective teaching looks like. When you're hitting everything on all cylinders, this is what effective teaching looks like. Know that you don't have to get there in day 1, right? Effective teaching takes years to get there. You know, at West-MEC right now, we're saying it takes at least 5 years to really understand these components and understand each of these. Your principals are gonna take you through this, you know, as they meet with you on a regular basis. Your coaches are gonna take you through this on the next 5 years. We have several in-services throughout the year, so we chunk this and teachers get this piece by piece, but we talk to them very much in non-education-ese terms. If you go through the rubrics, you'll notice we've really taken out a lot of the educational jargon. If you compare our rubrics with Danielson's actual rubric, it included a lot of technical language that we have omitted from ours to include, you know, like hands-on learning, the things that they're used to hearing in career and technical education. But it's a living, breathing document each year.
So you adapted this to us.
Absolutely.
As much as you can.
And I would say our school leaders, working very closely with the school leaders behind me, and our teachers are part of it. As teachers and principals meet, and they might say, boy, what does this word mean? You know, our principals suggest those changes, you know, to change words so that it's more understandable as we continue to work through this.
Okay, thank you.
So, Mr. Welch, one of the things that might be helpful, let's say Ms. Wiley is a brand new teacher. We just talked about the first 45 days of what building principals actually are doing with their new induction of their new staff members. What would she expect in relationship to evaluation? How would we go through that so she would know that?
Yeah, so Dr. Spurgeon, Board Member Wiley, it's a methodical process. Thanks to this governing board support, as you know, we bring teachers on much earlier than most districts. So you've allowed us to bring teachers on as early as April, the spring before they start teaching. So in that time, they will have taken certain premier series or our teacher induction courses that really guide them through, you know, just like a lesson plan, for instance, is broken into 2 different classes on what does it look like to carefully prepare a lesson to engage students. So there'd be 2 workshops on that. There's another workshop on classroom management. How do you effectively manage students and manage the classroom? Then in other smaller increments, we talk about grade book, you know, attendance procedures, how to communicate with families to engage them in the learning. You know, the kind of the front page stuff. As a teacher, you're a role model in the community. What are the things that you need to be aware of? You know, technology in the classroom with cell phones, what to be careful for, how to use cell phones properly to engage students in learning that would mirror industry practices. So each of those types of things are very carefully thought out throughout this 45-day period that happens. And our administrators and coaches, they go through this document with them as well as the 301 document to show them how they align and then how they support campus tactical plans or goals that we have on a regular year.
Thank you. That was great.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
Yes, so Mr. Chair, Mr. Welch, so just to clarify, to the best of your knowledge, during the last legislative session, there is no new legislation either with teacher certification or evaluations that would impact this document.
Dr. Pingarelli, Chairperson Straka, thank you for the question. To the best of my knowledge, there is nothing that recently passed with legislation that affects teacher evaluation. One of the things we did not mention is last year, there was some legislation around teacher evaluation that allowed us, I mentioned to you that we currently do this in the fall and the spring, there are 2 cycles. There was legislation last year that allows us as a district, if a teacher for the last 5 years, if we've had a teacher for 5 years and that teacher has scored highly effective, we could go down to once a year. And that was a good effort by the legislature to kind of make this less intense on teachers. You know, if a teacher's been highly effective for 5 years and doing good things, then maybe you're not making them go through the whole thing as much. We've had so many new teachers that we just haven't reached that phase yet. But that's certainly something that could come into the future with us as our teachers mature. And then as far as the teacher certification, we certainly will continue to benefit from teachers with industry experience and not teacher preparatory college degrees being able to come to us. But Dr. Pingarelli, I'm not aware of anything that impacted the evaluation or this instrument this year.
Okay, and Mr. Chair, Mr. Welch, one more question. So in reviewing what you've done over the last 12 months, how extensively, and just by estimate, has this document been revised? And what I'm looking for is 5%, 10%, it hasn't changed much at all. So that's a question. And then I do agree with the board or other comments from board members that, simplification, if possible, is always good. given the kind of teachers and individuals we hired, but just going, if you could kind of comment on, answer that question and comment.
Sure, thank you, Dr. Pingarelli. This year, it was pretty easy to answer the question. I would tell you that between 5 and 10%, closer to 5% changes. We changed the rubrics around CTSOs just a little bit to be a little clearer with teachers and to provide them some clearer expectations. Also, just a couple changes under work-based learning, but those were the only changes this year. Last year, you all approved a more significant change. Last year, we added the domains for work-based learning and CTSOs. So that was a more significant change last year. Since this was the first year they were in use, we kind of tweaked those words just a little bit so they were more easily understood by our teachers this year. So again, this year, probably about a 7% change, I would say.
Thank you very much.
Are you ready to make a motion to approve this?
I can make a motion to approve. I mean, it's just like Jim said, I mean, we've done so well, the end result is great. I just looked at that one, yeah.
Mr. Welch, when was the last time you presented this whole package to the board? It was a few years ago.
Boy, it's it's probably been in consent for 3 years, I would say. So it's been
Maybe after elections and new seats, that might be a thing in the spring.
Yeah, and I would say I'd love to do that in tandem with one of our principals. So, those are the folks on the ground really having these conversations, using the tool. It'd be powerful to hear their voice.
Well, I can see where you just incorporated, and this is just part of their new job. And this is the way it rolls.
So we have a motion, is there a second?
Oh, okay, yep. I was gonna, second.
So motion made by Ms.
To
Wiley
approve FNG.
to approve F and G and seconded by Mr. Kaltenbach. Before I call the question, real quick, any other conversation? I'd like to get the survey results that you've collected from the new teachers, if you could just share what you have with the board.
And Mr. Chair, I would suggest, next year is that we, maybe do this outside of consent, and because we will have a number of new board members, and that this be done as a regular agenda item.
Yep.
Thank you.
Sounds like a great idea, Dr. Pingarelli.
First and second.
First and second, anything else? I don't hear anything else, so I'll call for the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Right?
Any opposed? All right.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Mr. Welsh. All right, call to the public. I have one for a call to the public, Mr. George Gerardo. Gerardo?
I would like to begin by recognizing your commitment of service, of giving your time so freely month after month. Time is certainly a commodity that you cannot regain. Once used, there's no getting it back. Your role as a board member requires you to sacrifice your time, which is often met with criticism as you make decisions impacting students and staff. If you will, reflect on the most important component of an automobile. And I'll come back to that in a moment. My tenure at West-MEC has allowed me to grow an IT department from the ground up. The success or failure of West-MEC's information technology department laid on my shoulders. Once I embraced the challenge ahead of me, I realized I had the opportunity to build a legacy. I am proud to say that I have done that. I have not done that alone, however. Imagine this parable, if you will. There was a conversation between automobile parts. The dialogue was about which was the most important part or component of the car. After much debate and consternation, they finally agreed that none is more important than the other because they all support functionality, operation, and safety. If one part is left out, disaster or failure is imminent. Just ask a Formula One driver who has lost a race due to a faulty spark plug. Like the parable, my self-proclaimed success has not been possible without all West-MEC staff and the roles they provide. The IT techs for believing and supporting the vision I have provided. The business department for keeping our finances in order. Facilities for ensuring that our buildings are functional and safe for our students and staff. Student services for bringing in our students. Curriculum and instruction for providing our instructors with the support to develop student success. Human resources for bringing in the right staff and coordinating wellness. The superintendent's office for being at the helm and steering the ship and creating a culture of I can and I will. And lastly, the instructors for teaching our students life skills and giving them hope for a bright future. Our West-MEC does not exist without your role as a board member and the selfless sacrifice you make of your time and commitment. I thank you, and on behalf of all my peers and West-MEC family, for the considerations you have made regarding our benefits and pay compensation. I do ask that you will continue the dialogue of adjusting the rest of the staff salaries too. Unfortunately, my top two members in IT have recently entertained job offers from other school districts who are offering considerably higher wages. This is something that will continue throughout West-MEC as families continue to struggle to make ends meet. With a grateful heart, I thank you.
Thank you. And just a note, the board cannot discuss items for public comment because it's not posted in the agenda, but we appreciate Mr. Gerardo's time. Thank you very much. Moving on to item number 9, our redistricting proposal. Is Ms. Thompson here? So I just was going to refer to you a little bit. The redistricting proposal, Ms. Thompson went back to the consulting company that originally asked us for $40,000. She explained how we were different than a regular school district and everything else. And they came back with, I think, $9,600, keep me honest, $9,500 to do a lot of the work. There's some more work we'd have to do. We'd have to get some people at a public hearing, but it only has to be one. Am I missing anything? But, and that's kind of where we're at. They would draw something that would kind of realign the districts, keeping everything pretty much this, just realigned by population, but the districts would be about the same. I think that pretty much covers it.
I believe so. Thank you, Chairman Straka. I believe I emailed both you and Mr. Ramirez and explained that once we explained our circumstances, they were able to give us a more accurate quote.
Yes, sir.
Do you, for procurement rules and all that, we don't have to go ask anybody else?
Under 10,000, you do not.
Okay.
No, they did put out an RFP, and this was, I think, the only one that came back. And so we've renegotiated, well, Ms. Thompson and her staff has renegotiated from 40,000 to 9,500, so
Good job.
I would be more than happy to go with that.
Do it.
But if any other questions, otherwise I.
What are the add-on options? We're not doing those?
The add-on options were,
And it says basic costs was 95, and then there's these add-on things. I mean, it's still better than what they gave us in the beginning.
Those are strictly optional.
Yeah, these are all optional, if we decide to go with any of these.
So I think Mrs. Wiley's asking, do we want to do any of those things?
Or are we doing any? Or when do you decide if you want to do any of those? I mean, we see what their report is for 95 and figure if you need more, you'll get more.
we can bring the other optionals in later. We don't have to approve those today.
Okay.
It's my understanding. Is that correct?
I didn't hear you, I'm sorry.
We don't have to sign for the optional stuff today. We can come back.
No, we do not. And also because Mr. Kaltenbach said that there was no other replies to our original quote, we could go ahead and add these on and on an as-needed basis.
It'll be legal. Okay, let's do it.
Is that a motion?
Sure. Make motions, please.
Could you?
Mr. Straka, I move that we approve the redistricting contract as presented by staff.
And I'll second.
All right. Any other discussion? I'll call for the question. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right. Any opposed? All right, it passes.
That was a funding thing. Do we need to do it by roll call, Mrs. Markham? Or because it was unanimous, you're good? Okay.
All right, moving on to item 10, highlights 21-22 data accomplishments from the communications department. Mr. Cook.
Thank you, Chairman Straka, members of the governing board, and Superintendent Dr. Spurgeon. We're excited to present today some of the highlights, and I promise will be kind of quick. Specifically, you're going to see here the 6 things that we're going to be talking about today. First up is media relations. To this date, we've had 24 press releases in a short amount of time. The year before we had 14, so a significant increase. You can see right here some of the ones that we highlighted here for you. Specifically the one in orange. You might be familiar with this particular person here, former board member, Mr. Ellis, who's now at the Northeast campus in the construction program. Had a great story, a lot of placements with this particular article about students rebuilding. I see Barbara Wiley, Mrs. Wiley kind of shaking her head. You probably saw some of the articles and also in the news. So a great opportunity for students to get a real world experience and also help a veteran. We had this year 442 media mentions and placements, so kudos to the communications team. Our top media story is this one that you see here. We've sent it a while back, but it's just a great story about a student who had eyesight challenges in the medical program and really became successful with the great instructor, with the great teacher instructing her, and it was just a really heartwarming story. Also, on the right-hand side, you can see all the media placements that we've had this year. On the far right, the TV stations, and then on the left, kind of all the big news, Arizona Republic, Phoenix Business Journal, West Valley View, and so on. So these are just some of the places, and then that picture behind there was one of our students in the vet program in the Northeast campus when she was on ABC 15. Just to kind of give you some benchmarking, so we had 442 at the time that we submitted this. EVITS, our counterpart in the East Valley, at the time when we did it, total had 332. And then as far as total placements and media mentions, our other counterpart in Tucson had 111. So once again, kudos to the communications team, also to the great stories that we're able to push out there. So I'm very excited to have that amount of media placements and mentions. Just from a state, not only statewide, but national, you can see here all the areas that we were placed or mentioned. Obviously, our color is a little bit darker because we had more placements in that particular area right there. But we did have some media mentions throughout the country as well. And on the left-hand side, you can see our total audience. So the total kind of impressions, our total reach that happened throughout the nation. And then obviously our online print publicity. That just means if we actually advertised all this out there, it would be around this price. So advertising is very, very expensive. So we obviously want to get as many media mentions and not pay for type of things like this. So a great, great year once again. Like I said, kudos to our staff for having good stories for us to promote.
Go back to that screen just for a second. Do you find it interesting that we're on the West Coast and we see more mentions of West-MEC on the East Coast than we do where we are? Do you find that interesting? And if so, why do you think that might be?
When we push out things, it's up to the media to pick it up. So sometimes we'll obviously have like areas that we're trying to push into, obviously Arizona in our certain area demographic over here. When we push out press releases to Newswire, which is one of the major ones that can push it out and other people can pick it up, it's up to those states to pick it up. So if we want to specifically target some of those western states or whatever, we can through payments and those kind of things, but it's up to those places to actually pick them up if they want. that's a great question. Thank you, Dr. Spurgeon.
So could you explain the difference between a placement and a mention?
Sure, a placement is something where we actually write like a press release, push it out, and then somebody actually picks it up, like that article, I'll go back right here. Like this one right here, we put out a press release, they picked it up, it's an actual placement. A mention is somebody just talks about West-MEC, like for example, I think it's the Kmart facility, where we're working with Kmart in the Deer Valley area, where there's some talks about West-MEC being part of that. They mentioned West-MEC as a partner, so that's a mention. We didn't push anything out. So mentions are good also for like brand recognition. It shows your visibility out there, so if people are actually mentioning you, it's something that we're not doing. Does that help?
Mr. Macarino.
Sure, Mr. Cook, you were giving kudos to your department. That's great. Who is in your department now? How many people, what do they do, and how long have they been with us?
Sure. Our one person you're gonna see right here, Miss Carissa Cota, she's gonna be talking about social media. She's our social media specialist, and she's been here for a few years now. She works part-time. We have a brand new employee, 3 days, a communications specialist. He took over for, if you remember, Beulah. She was up here and she spoke to us, a very nice gal that she was here, and she had to move back to India. I'm obviously the director here. And then we have our media production specialist. She's been around a year now, and she comes from Missouri as well, so right there. So that's who we have in the team, so 4.
Chairman Stricker, one of the things that we're working on is looking at our benchmark districts. And so, for example, Great Oaks out of Ohio, and also Francis Tuttle out of Oklahoma. So I didn't see any mentions in Oklahoma, so that's one thing we're gonna have to work on and figure out. So now as we look to compare our data and what we do as a school district, we're looking at those benchmark districts to see what they're doing and see where we can put ourselves in the same light that they're sitting in right now. So it sounds like a little thing, but to me, it's a big thing to make sure we get that out there.
Mr. Cook, as a CT teacher, I subscribe to the Association of Career Technical Education, ACTE. I get their newsletter. Like, that's a national publication, but it's like headquartered in Virginia. So like where would that show up on the map? Because like every CT teacher, well, most CT teachers who are subscribed in the nation would receive that when West-MEC's mentioned. But like, where does that show up on your map? Is it just like who published it kind of a thing?
Correct. We have a system called Critical Mention that shows the areas where we were placed.
So if ACTE's office is in Virginia, then it, like, even though that went nationally, it would show as a thing in Virginia? Is that right?
In fact, it's funny, thinking with some of the placements, we had even Dr. Marquet in his area in Wisconsin, we got like a media placement there. And so that shows up in that area. So it really just comes up to some people that want to place us once we push stuff out.
So Cook, I have a question. When you're putting out stories, social media, stuff like that, are you targeting a certain audience, or is there like a goal, a certain result that we're trying to get, and also are there certain areas that we're geographical areas that we're trying to target?
It's a great question. In the past, we've done marketing to school districts that typically have not had higher enrollment. And so we've targeted like print materials to that area and have seen results for that, working with our counselors and staff here. We typically will not highlight as much programs that we know that are just doing great with enrollment, whether it's veterinary science or medical programs. So as you might be familiar now, because you've been here for a while, high opportunity programs. So we'll work specifically, to try to highlight those in social media, push some things, do some advertising and those kind of things in those type of programs, or have some paid type of advertisements to highlight those type of programs. We work with student services and the counselors to talk about which programs need the most help as far as from a promotion standpoint. How can we help? Because obviously we're a team here, and so that's kind of how it works. So working with the counselors, working with student services, and just anybody else to be able to promote certain things.
Mr. Ramirez, if you think about, how we utilize media, there's some big buckets out there for recruiting and marketing and being informative, or being in recognitions, also for being educational So there's some big buckets that we utilize the media for to be able to do multiple things. But those are probably 5 or 6 of the biggest buckets we use it for. And every media piece has a targeted audience,
Yeah, okay,
some more specific than others.
thank you.
Thanks for the question. Design projects, we meet, speaking with departments every year at the beginning of the year and talk about what projects they need for the year. And so every department has the opportunity to meet with us. This year, we completed 98 design projects for this, all the staff. And when I kind of see here, 2 of the ones that we kind of thought were really neat this year was the one on the left-hand side, created an aesthetics salon for obviously those students to get some real world experience. So it's always kind of fun to be able to create stuff like that. On the right-hand side is our impact report. That's obviously very fun for us to be able to highlight all the great things that students are doing and our staff as well. So there's just 2 items that we created. But also in addition, as you know, as you look at these pictures that pop up here, we have all kinds of campuses in our district office here, and from time to time, they have other needs besides the one that they already talked about. So in addition to the 98, we completed 286 projects for staff. You can see on the left-hand side, some of them are asking for social media posts or for a PowerPoint or for a video or some promo items, flyers, those kind of things. So things that we typically did not have on our radar. One of the ones that I hopefully make you smile a little bit that we did was our Congrats You're Accepted design for students once they're accepted in the program. This was actually sent to us by one of the counselors in a district, but it's just great to see some of the smiling faces of students receiving their congrats, they're accepted. So once again, that's the fun part of creating some designs. Next up is we're talking about our social media specialist and who truly has kind of changed the game for us from a social media standpoint is Carissa Cota. She's going to talk a little bit quickly about social media initiatives.
Thank you, Chairman Streka, Governing Board members, Superintendent Dr. Spurgeon. So I want to just start off by kind of revisiting the difference between some of the metrics that we look at. One of the first ones is engagements. So that's anytime anyone shares anything we post, they like, comment, any kind of interaction with the post that we create. And impressions are going to be anytime any of the content we create enters anybody's screen. So anything West-MEC creates just enters your screen. So we're going to see a lot more of the impressions. So you can see here we had just under 600,000 impressions this year. But the engagements are really what we're aiming for when we're interacting with our community and stakeholders. And so speaking of engagements, these are some of the organizations that reacted, commented, shared some of our posts. So you can see a couple of them there, Glendale Star, St. Mary's Food Bank. So a couple of organizations in the Valley sharing what we're doing at West-MEC when we post it. And the highest engaged post that we had this year was this post that you see here on the right when former Superintendent Donovan received his Lifetime Achievement Award. And so that was wildly successful, mostly because so many people shared it, and those shares lead to more likes, more comments from people who may not interact with us normally.
You can keep track of that, huh?
Yes, we do. We get all of that. So I did notice that you were very active in sharing that. You helped us get a lot of likes and comments on that. So,
Any way I can.
so sharing those posts, that really does drive more likes and more interaction with our content.
And that's an important fact that she's saying is instead of liking, sharing is really, really key.
That's like has the highest value, sharing
Okay,
that post. Yeah.
sure. I don't like that other like button.
And so kind of like the media mentions, there's also social media mentions where other accounts will mention us and tag us. And so these are just a couple of screenshots of some of the social media mentions we had this year. You can see there in the middle, Maricopa County Sheriff's Office highlighted our law and public safety program in their social media. So this is another great way for us to get free advertising, like mention us, and people who may not have heard about us will kind of be curious and click along and see what we're posting. Okay, and then back to Chris with some more information on events this year.
Thanks, Carissa. Appreciate your expertise and what you bring to the table. Events, we covered 44 district events this year. As I click, you can see some of the ones that we had here. On the very bottom in orange, those are the two ones that specifically communication runs, so Experience Orange event. And a lot of the information that we do for recognition ceremony is kind of housed in communications department, although it is a team effort. We're excited for this year for Experience Orange. It'll be actually in person. Last couple of years, it's actually been, online, and so I know a few of you board members have gone to Experience Orange in the past, but it's a very good way for folks that don't know about West-MEC to come learn about West-MEC, community members and those kind of things. So if you would like to share, the rest of you, when we post that, please do share so we can get some folks there. And there's just some pictures of some of the events because we do take photos and we'll use them for either social media or we house them for staff to use as well. Awards. We had some great awards this year. We talked about ASPRA. We had 3 awards that we won for ASPRA, Arizona School of Public Relations. Spirit of Acova Award, that was a Lifetime Achievement Award for Superintendent Donovan. The Phoenix Business Journal that Carissa alluded to. And then the West-MEC Best of the West. You can see that picture right there. That's Dr. Isom accepting the award for education for West-MEC. So West-MEC won other awards, but these are the ones that specifically the communications department had a hand in nomination and going through that, kind of fun process of filling all that kind of stuff out. Finally, last is videos through Tony's work. Tony is the person that's been here for a year now, a great addition to the team. She created 22 total videos. You can see some of the videos that are there on the left-hand side. The 3 that are highlighting in orange there relate to the pictures that you see right there. So the student program tours, those 2 top ones right there, those 2 students, it's kind of an interactive tour, student-led. Those have over 5,000 views a piece on our YouTube, so they're really, really highly engaged videos. The bottom one right there is the Why I Hire West-MEC. We'll continue to do more, but it's an industry person talking about why are they hiring West-MEC. Very, very powerful. Our auto teachers, some of them are actually going to use this next year in their intro to show the power of what we do. And then finally down there, why we do what we do. If you were at the all-staff meeting, and I know Mr. Kaltenbach was, and Ms. Wiley, you saw the video that I'm going to say, you saw 3 of the videos. I'm going to share one of them today of the video of the teacher impact this year.
Inspirational.
Calm.
Empowering.
Honest. Professional.
Passionate.
Mentor.
Strong. Hilarious.
Stellar.
Genuine.
He's always told me that I know you could do it and that you've always had the potential and that I never stopped believing in you and I've always liked that about Brooke and that he's always motivating us to do our best and to succeed and to have a better future.
I just really appreciate everything he does for me,
The thing I admire most about Ms. Garza is that she's not only kind, but she's very caring towards all of her students.
He doesn't leave anyone behind. He's just an amazing teacher. I've never had a teacher even care as much as he does. I mean, his class is always just a positive environment.
You've been a big influence in my life over the past year. You've really made me love doing hair, and you made me excited about learning new things, and your passion for the industry has really spread onto me, and I'm really grateful for that, so thank you.
I've grown up not knowing if I would ever have a future for myself. And when I met Miss Ray, she completely changed that. She's what I want to be. If I could be anybody in this entire world, it would be her, because not only has she taught me everything that I need for the future and has prepared me for a career and has given me that foundation to be someone, she has taught me what it means to be kind and be generous and be loving, and not only to other people but to yourself. And without Miss Ray, I don't think I would be here today.
He really cares about every student in his class. He always tries to make sure you understand what's going on.
The relationship that we've formed over this past year is unlike any other teacher. He's really wonderful all around.
She is always here for us, and she has prepared each and every one of us to keep going in the future.
There's just a lot of little things you can take from a niece that make a really big difference in your life.
Ms. Bautista, I'd just like to say that I'm grateful for everything you've done for me over these past 2 years, and that how much you pushed me and how much you believed in me to succeed in this industry, and that you didn't give up on me. And that you're an inspiration to a lot of people. And it means the world that you were my instructor. And yeah, I'm grateful for everything you've taught me, and just how an amazing person you are. And so yeah, thanks.
That's the best part, obviously, of all of our jobs. It brings us back to the why. So also just one thing, I want to let you know, very proud, my best man 23 years ago, his niece, or his daughter, is going to be in a West-MEC program next year. My niece is going to be in a West-MEC program, and my wife will be starting next week in Project Search. So if there's anybody who's really truly bleeding orange, it's this person over here. So it's an honor to serve West-MEC, and thank you for letting us speak today. And I won't say, this is a pet peeve of one of our campus principals, Mr. Swarnick, who I believe is back there. I won't say I'm going to stand for questions, because I'm already standing. So we will just be here for any other questions at this point.
Would you like to sit down for questions?
If you would like me to, you're chairman, so.
This is just wild curiosity. The music, is that just public domain music? I know that all of our school districts have amazing music programs. And I know we're career technical education. I get it, but like they might have students that could do that, right? It might be an opportunity to provide, just another way to provide opportunities for students. And maybe like a film or TV program or connection at some satellite program might be a pretty awesome thing. Because it's good music, but it's not really hard music as music is. Does that make sense? The people that do that, it's not hard.
I get you saying.
Like that kind of music, that kind of background music, like there's tons of kids around the West Valley that could do that. It might be an interesting opportunity for people.
And this year, we've taken a couple interns that helped with Ms. Cota for social media and as well, so that's always fun to be able to help students as well.
And then finally, awesome as always.
Thank you.
Yeah, it might not be hard, but it would be a great addition to a student's resume, for sure.
Great, thank you.
Contribute to a video.
The new teachers,
Who are the producers and the directors for the video?
It's Tony and I. So we collaborate. The vision that I had of having these kind of intimate conversations with the chairs and then bringing out we took pictures of it each time and I rolled out, and then we took a picture and rolled out. So the concept was mine to have this kind of interaction, and then having that kind of whiteboard at the very end. And then Tony's just so great with setting up the shot. So creatively, it's always a process, but it was my idea to come up with that concept.
Thank you.
So I was just going to ask, do we ever have any like social media day at school where we encourage students to tag West-MEC? Hey, first day of school, show us what you're doing. Last day of the semester, show us what you're doing, because I would think that students' interaction, when they post stuff, they get like a couple hundred likes each, so 2,000 times 200.
Yeah, so we do kind of do these call to actions is what it's called, where we prompt the students to post and tag us. But in addition to that, CTSOs at each campus, different programs, have the option to run a social media account for their program. So we have several social media accounts that are run by students, and they post what's the day-to-day looks like in their program, and then we can also take some of that and repost it to our own social media as well.
It would just be fun to see how many reactions we could get on like the first day of school or something, just.
Definitely something that we will incorporate a little bit more.
Mr. Cook, you have done partnerships, so when we were at the X building, I forget the name of it, the next building.
Next building.
That was Centennial High School students doing all that video work, so.
Streaming work.
So how much are we farming out, partnering with those students too? So we don't have our own film and TV.
Correct.
Yeah.
The only other one that I know a campus is farmed out is the Northwest campus, and they've done some work with Dykstar, I believe. Yes. Student broadcasting, yes, for some initiatives for their particular campus.
Great.
And like I said, then we also take some interns as well.
Couple things real quick. Number one is Mr. Cook and I talked about the use of some drones, but we're limited on a couple of campuses because of the airspace. But we're going to be doing some pretty interesting things with some drone footage and things like that. So 2 questions. Number one, what didn't you see up there through the communications department that you'd like to see? And number 2, what did you see that you like that you want to see more of? Or things that we would just entertain any comments or feedback for us as we move forward.
I think for me, the one thing I didn't see is, I know we've done some paid advertising. How has the paid advertising, like, break that out to those impressions? What did our paid advertising get us and where versus our free advertising? I'm just curious, what does what? You don't have, just for the next presentation.
Sure.
Any other comments from the board?
Where can we see the other 2 videos? Are they timed to come out later?
We can send them over. You've been posting on social media.
They're all available on our YouTube channel, but I've been posting, I think 2 out of the 3 have been posted, so there's gonna be 1 more going up, but I can email those to you directly.
I know you have already sent us that, but could you send us the YouTube address, link, whatever it is?
Sure.
Again?
Some of us don't go on YouTube.
They're now on your YouTube channel? Oh, okay, so we can just go click there and copy the link. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thanks very much. Great job. All right, moving on to item number 11, Dr. Spurgeon, consideration of Natterburg.
Thank you, Chairman Straka. Just wanted to provide a little historical context of Natterburg's interest in joining West-MEC, and so let me just run down the list of information. I was able to talk to Dr. Angelou and get some information and feedback from her as superintendent. She couldn't be more excited to be a part of West-MEC, and so first and foremost, Mr. Donovan informed the governing board of Natterburg's interest in possibly joining West-MEC family on March the 10th, 2021, and so he has mentioned this once or twice as time has moved on. Natterburg Unified School District 81 was an elementary district until 2006, when the voters chose to become unified. Unfortunately, the district attempted unsuccessfully to pass a bond to start the high school for 13 years. The board asked Dr. Angelou to come to Natterburg in 2019 and envision an innovative high school to help their students prepare for post-secondary education and entry-level business opportunities in the community and beyond. They passed a small bond in November of 2019 to start their high school. In order to get the facilities oversight board funding for the comprehensive high school, the district was tasked with recruiting 121 students. They have over 300 enrolled for the fall and are beginning to build processes for the new campus. The model for Mountainside High School is a dual pathway towards industry certification, West-MEC, and post-secondary education. In partnership with Mr. Donovan, they work to develop a non-traditional story of a high school for their rural community. They are very proud and excited to be able to provide transportation to West-MEC and give their students the amazing learning experiences we offer. Additionally, Dr. Angelou is also the superintendent of Morristown Elementary School District 75. And it's my understanding their board recently toured West-MEC not too long ago. Morristown eighth graders attending Mountainside High School are looking forward for their first opportunity at West-MEC. They also partner with Wickenburg Community Hospital, and they're looking forward to having students from West-MEC in their internships and workforce. Their current cadre of students for West-MEC are having registrations and fees paid by their district to build support for the program and recruitment. They do have 6 students who applied and were accepted for the fall of 22-23, and for those, they are paying the registration and fees for them. This was an agreement we had to help to build a program for West-MEC and Natterburg Unified School District. Therefore, I recommend the governing board approve the request of Natterburg School District to allow their board to continue the process of calling for a special election on November the 8th, 2022, so their electors can vote on the ballot question proposing that the district join West-MEC family pursuant to Arizona Revised Statute 15-395.
Dr. Spurgeon, how many voters are in Natterburg?
I don't know the answer to that question. I mean, I put questions at the bottom of my list, and if you ask me any other questions other than what I just read you, I probably can't answer them.
Mike? So like that, right now, that's the U and the space, the big bite out of the top of Barbara's district. So if we add them, then, right? So my concern is not about adding Natterburg, that's great, more people, more opportunities. My concern is, if we go through this redistricting thing and then they add, and then that throws us off again, we gotta do it again. Is that a thing that we can we include that data? Can we ask the company that we just voted on, can we make sure that data is included? Because they gotta.
Yeah, I have an answer to that because we've talked about that in the past.
All right.
Natterburg is small enough that when we do the redistricting, whether they're in or out, we'll do the redistricting where it won't affect our numbers because you're allowed a 10% margin.
So we just gotta make that district, District 4, just a smidge smaller, so that when it comes on, it's, Mrs. Thompson has an answer for us.
The company will give you 2 scenarios that we're recruiting, and they will add and use Natterburg numbers and one without, but like Chairman Straka said, it won't change the boundary.
We will file in December once we know the answer.
Okay, thank you.
Good thinking.
It was my understanding it would not make a difference, I just don't know how many actually are there.
Do you know what their student population is, right?
I don't.
Well,
300 is what they've worked up to for the high school.
For the high school or the whole district?
She said they had recruited 121, they have now over 300 enrolled for the fall.
In high school?
I would assume that's what.
Okay.
She was very excited.
So do we have to vote on a thing? Is that
Yes,
what
we
we're
do,
doing?
and I have to sign an official document.
Do you?
This is the first step in the process, we have to approve it, and then they have to have their board approved, and it goes to an election.
Yeah, and I thought, because on this document, I always thought that in the past, it seems like it's how many approved yes, how many approved no, or how many voted no and how many abstained, but.
Mr. Straka?
Yes, sir.
I move that we adopt a resolution accepting Natterburg Unified School District number 81 into West-MEC contingent upon their election this coming November.
Second.
Okay, it was seconded by Mr. Ramirez. Any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. Do we need a roll call on this one, Mrs. Markham?
I would.
Pardon me?
I would.
All right, then, Ms. Markham, would you take roll?
Frank Straka.
Yes.
James Colton-Bob.
Yes.
Barbara Wiley.
Yes.
Juan Ramirez.
Yes.
Jim Migliorino.
Yes.
Peter Pingarelli.
Yes.
My presentations will be a little less formal as I begin to have a better understanding of some of
That's okay. You know, in your vast experience of 13 days on the job, I think you're doing fine. The motion passes unanimously, 6-0. We will move on. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.
Mr. Straka?
Yes, sir.
I move we convene a public hearing as indicated in item 12.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second by Mr. Jim and Mr. Jim. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the question to move into public hearing. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? We are now in a public hearing. Ms. Thompson?
Thank you, Chairman Strachan, governing board members, and Superintendent Spurgeons. I think it was 3 weeks ago, yesterday, that I was before you and gave you a presentation on the proposed budget. And then 2 days later, they died and changed the forms and increased funding, yay!
It's an annual affair.
It's an annual affair now. But what they did do this year was they also passed a law that said that we could adopt an increased budget if we told you what we were increasing. They've never done that before. They usually just say, whatever you propose, you have to adopt. And so what was proposed in June was always adopted in July. This year, we're able to increase our budget because of the increased BSL, if we tell you what we're doing with the increased funding. So on your cover memo in your board book, the budget is on the new forms, and the only budget adjustments made was $3.9 million to our budget. And we are planning on, previously leadership discussed what we would do if we got increased funding, and so we're moving forward with these proposed increased member district funding with the satellite base, the industry-aligned equipment. We would fully fund Gila Bend and Littleton. They were both aware that we may or may not be able to fund them based on our funding. And increased CTSO competition and events to our member districts. We know that prices for travel have skyrocketed, and so we wanted to be able to give our 46 high schools some added funding there. Program equipment upgrades that we gave our campus administrators and programs, kind of a hold pattern on some equipment that needed to be purchased or upgraded. And then the rest was allocated to construction, maintenance, and repairs. With that, I'll stand for questions.
Question, that 3 million, is that that increase in the unrestricted capital outlay fund? Is that what that is? Is that the increase in the capital outlay fund? I'm comparing to the.
Yes.
Comparing to the.
Yes, thank you, good question. Here, let me grab this real quick. So the base funding went from 46 to 50 million. And almost 47 million to 50. And then our capital went from 4.5 million to 4.5 million to 5 million. So that was increased. They took DAA and they increased it about $55 per pupil. And then the base funding went up about $300 per ADM. So when you do the budget, we get those allocations, and you can see them on, I can show you on page 7 of your budget sheets as well. Page 7 of 8 of your budget sheets, at the top, will show you our revenue control limit, which is based off of the BSL, our ADM, and then the 5 million is there shown for our DAA calculations. Any other questions?
How much for the district member funding is restricted, meaning they can't just roll it into salaries?
Right now, it's at 4 million.
And what was it last year?
Pardon me?
What was it last year?
3.5, I think, was the carryover about.
Okay, so are we putting most of that increase in where they can't use it for salaries, or? I guess of the 1.5 million that we're providing to the member districts, how much is it they have to use for CTE and how much can they use on salaries?
I don't think we've determined that yet.
So, sorry, so is this 1.5, is that all going into the formula, or is it some of it gonna go into the grants and all of that kind of stuff? I think that's the question.
It will go into all of it.
All of it will go into the formula?
Hopefully we'll increase the base and then take and spread it across. And it's all a formula and we do a prorated, and I can let Stephen talk to that.
Internally, we've talked to Dr. Spurgeon. We still need to get together for a final decision, but we've talked about a 60-40 split, with 40% going into the formula that's unrestricted, Chairperson Straka, 60% going into various restricted areas, which would include industry-aligned capital equipment, specific grants that are identified goals, industry credentials, so it's very specific on where that would go, has been that initial conversation.
I think even 40% allowed to be spent on salaries, increase in salaries. I just think it should be more on equipment, would be my thought. Because we already have a lot going into salaries out of that base.
Mr. Welsh, how many districts, how many of our partner districts are supplanting, not supplanting?
Supplementing.
So
You've probably got about three of the member districts that, are where greater than 50% of the unrestricted amount is going to support salaries.
So some districts take in 1990, when they created the JTED law, there was a word called supplanting, and the idea was that you couldn't use JTED, now CTED money, to supplant or replace funding that you should as a district be spending anyway. So in theory, teacher salaries, you have 2,000 kids in your school, you should pay enough salary money out of your M&O as a district to put enough teachers in front of those 2,000 kids. Well, so then there are districts that will say, oh, but this is a CTE class, so instead of keeping their West-MEC formula grant dollars to pay for equipment and training and teachers, they steal it, it's not, they supplant it, but it's not supplanting because the Attorney General, but anyway, they take that money away from equipment and supplies and they use it to just pay the salary of that teacher. And instead of saying, well, we were gonna have 2,000 kids and we should pay the salary from our M&O, and then this West-MEC money should be the extra stuff that for expensive CTE programs. There are districts that use some of or a whole bunch of the West-MEC money to just pay teacher salaries where they should have been just paying teacher salaries on their own. There's been Attorney General decisions and all this kind of stuff on whether it's legal and how it happens, but anyway, so that was the question.
Right, and if we're going to provide more money to the districts, I would like to see it go to CTE programs and not supplanting, and so that's why I asked the question, I think 40%.
So then many years ago, Mr. Donovan and staff figured out a way so that there's a portion of the money that's in the formula that goes into the district's M&O, and this is money that those districts that choose to could take and use for salaries. And then there's a portion of the money we give to satellite programs that is specific. So it might be specific if a school district's gonna rebuild their culinary arts lab, then they can apply for a West-MEC grant, and then that money goes directly to buying new ovens and this kind of stuff. If a satellite program has a new program, they're gonna start a new program, they can apply to West-MEC for a grant to get that program up and running. If they have new teachers, they can apply to West-MEC for a grant to help train teachers. So that's money that, like, the bookkeepers in those specific districts can't move around. It's locked into that kind of thing. how'd I do?
Pay for assessments as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And that's why I think the districts have got plenty for salaries. I would be happy if all 1.5 million went fully to CTE instead of teachers' salaries, because they should provide.
Today, who knows? If they have plenty.
So is that 60-40 thing just a decision for admin, or is that something we're gonna have to vote on later?
That's a decision for Dr. Spurgeon. We just barely, as you know, in his brief time with
Yeah,
us,
yeah.
we've just barely talked about it this much. So this has been a good conversation, I'm sure, for him. He balances, of course, our member district superintendents would tell you that the money being there allows them to grow more CTE programs, especially with some of our growing districts, like Tolleson and Agua Fria that's added schools. Having that unrestricted money allows them to start programs. The Buckeye District, where Dr. Spurgeon was today, they're very excited about. They're using that money to start ed profession programs. So at each one of their schools, they've started an ed professions program, and that unrestricted money has allowed them to jumpstart the program. So they have money to hire a teacher and pay a teacher. They're paying a teacher a little bit over a teacher contract to really be able to recruit and retain those teachers. Kind of like what you were talking about earlier, Barbara, is how do we retain teachers? So they're using some of that money to do creative things like that. So there'll be some pressure to, hey, let us have money because it gives us tools to do creative things to retain talent in this market.
Which they have to today.
And there's a happy balance there, but you can't do one without the other, so there has to be an amount for both sides of that. So if you have equipment and no teacher, you still have a program, but there has to be a happy balance. We haven't gotten to that point yet about what that looks like, but we appreciate the feedback for sure.
And then my other question is on the travel for students. I've heard from multiple students over the years, everybody signs up for some kind of HOSA event, and don't worry about getting there, just sign up, West-MEC's gonna pay for it. Do we require attendance or proof of attendance? Because I know I've heard that since my daughter was in high school.
We appreciate how these rumors are out there, but CTSO is completely on a reimbursement basis. And so we have to see their registration. So they have to they show us the registration. We get confirmation from ADE that, yep, they had 50 students there, 50 signed up, 50 students came, and then we reimburse them. So if they had some no-shows, for instance, they do not get reimbursed.
And we don't pay 100% either.
Okay, I am good with that.
And then also they don't pay, West-MEC doesn't pay the whole boat, like they pay,
No.
right? So when our FFA chapter goes to national convention, if we've qualified, West-MEC pays for the registration, right? But then the chapter has to come up with transportation. There's a transportation stipend, so you get this much money, but if it costs more,
And
then that's on your own.
That's the increase Barbara was talking about. So currently, we've paid $500 to go towards travel and lodging. Because of the increase in travel costs and lodging costs this year, this increase that's before you will allow us to go to $750. So next year, for students who qualify, they have to qualify for nationals, we will pay up to $750. Member districts, they submit the airfare and lodging, and then we reimburse them. But as you know, $750 usually, right now, that is only paying for the airfare. So the lodging is still being paid for on the district side through their own funding mechanisms and/or fundraisers.
Good answers, thank you.
If you can get a flight.
If they don't
get a
cancel
flight.
it when you're somewhere else.
Any other questions?
This is a public thing.
Anybody from the public want to grill Ms. Thompson?
She stares them all down.
Especially the finance department or business office, you're
Grill-
welcome to ask
grill your boss.
questions. Yes, sir.
Mr. Straka, I move that we close the public hearing and return to regular session.
It moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, we are back into regular session. Mr. Kaltenbach.
Mr. Strick, I move item number 14, adoption of the maintenance and operation capital outlay budget as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
It was made by Mr. Kaltenbach, seconded by Mr. Ramirez. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All in favor of the budget as
Well, this is a budget thing. Does that have to be?
Oh, it has to be roll call. That's right. Ms. Markham?
Frank Stricker,
Aye. Yes?
James Kaltenbach,
Aye.
Barbara Wiley,
Yes.
Juan Ramirez,
Yes.
Jim Migliorino,
Yes.
Peter Pingarelli.
Yes.
All right. Item number 15, update on the District 5 vacancy. Last I heard, nobody filed their 400 signatures in time. No statement of interest, no filing. So it will be opened up to a write-in candidate or candidates. And if there's more than one candidate, there will be an election that the district has to pay for.
Which are the ones on that map? Is it the orange or the pink or the green?
I believe it's the orange in the upper, under it's that orange.
That orange?
Section.
Which is number
No, I thought it was the one,
I
5?
happen to have a map.
You have a map?
I've been working on it for days and days.
Days and days?
Deke did.
He did it for you?
Let me see.
Can I have this?
Different than what's on there.
Yes.
Thank you, Barbara.
Camelback, Northern.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Markham. That is a goofy shape.
And thank you for enhancing the map.
I'm just trying to figure, where is Greenway? Oh, no. I was gonna say,
Because I've got some people have asked me, but they didn't know if they lived in the area.
my son lives in there. That'd be fun to have another Frank Straka on the board.
That wouldn't be crazy at all.
He would be very entertaining. Anyway, so that's where it is at. Mr. Watson is not gonna make a temporary appointment for the rest of the year, is my understanding, unless something has changed.
Who?
Mr. Watson would have to make a temporary appointment for the rest of the year for the remainder of the term,
Oh, because this election wouldn't be till November.
because the election wouldn't be till November.
But they have to send a letter by the 25th.
But we have
If
to
they're
have,
interested, am I
but if we
correct?
have more than one person,
But if they file a write-in, that would be a write-in for the November election. And they have till the
and if we have more
25th.
than one write-in,
If they have more than one write-in, then we would pay for
how much is it? 100,000?
probably
How much is an
100,000.
election? Off the top of your head.
Probably between 400,000 and 600,000.
4 and 600. All right, we get it straightened out before we get anything.
What would you get?
Yeah, I mean, just, Mr. Kaltenbach's seat will probably cost us $200,000 for that election.
Oh, that's right, because she's got it.
So we'll probably be looking at $500,000 in elections because they have to send out the publicity pamphlet and we get charged for a portion of the mailing of that as well. And so we'll have 2 districts, so that's roughly 30% of the district will get a mailing. And we'll be paid for a part of that from the county election for the sample ballot and everything. Anybody who requests an absentee ballot and that postage and return postage, anyway, so that's kind of the update.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, that takes us to future agenda items. I think we talked about one item for next year, and that is the rubrics for teacher evaluation. When we have new board members, there might be a whole series, let's call it kind of a boot camp thing, teacher's rubric, and a few other things that we might want to put on there that we haven't done in a while. Any other agenda items?
We also wanted to see in the future the difference between paid ads versus free ads.
Right, next time we do a update.
Just a question. when we did salary adjustments a month or two ago, we were going to come back with others. Do we have a time frame for that?
I believe we talked that sometime in October was the timeline. I think with October, we were looking for a timeline for that, and we were also going to,
You don't want to wait until the end.
well, everybody's under a contract right now, so we can't adjust contracts. We would have to start to get that ball rolling for the next contract year.
Okay, Chairman Streka, if I understand your question, the board suggested that we do a study and we hire an outside organization to do a comparison of job likes. We can start that in September. I don't believe it was recommended to bring it back in September. It's to start that process. So when we get into discussions in February and March, we'll have that data, we'll have that information. Dr. Spurgeon suggested today for job alikes that we are so focused on industry that we do industry comparisons of what the salaries are in industry compared to using some of the member districts and their job alikes. So I think that's a great suggestion, but I believe the recommendation is to start it. We have to I don't think we have to do an RFP depending on the cost of the study. The last one we did was about $5,000 or $6,000.
That's not bad.
Yeah, but if we do extensively and it gets over the $10,000, then we'll have to come back to the board. But that was what I believe the timeline was, is to start it in September or October and have it prepared and ready to go by the first of the year.
I think the other thing we would like to probably see is when we start to look at that is how healthcare benefits fit, because in private industry, I'm used to paying a small portion of healthcare and also my family being subsidized. That is not the case in education. And I think that's something else we should compare and look at. It's just not salary, it's a benefits package. Salary is a portion of your compensation. And so I think that's all things we look at. Retirement benefits. In private industry, you get a match to what you put in your retirement and those things as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think it's the number one priority for us. I mean, as we look around, everyone's struggling, so we gotta get out ahead of it, or we're not gonna have people in the classroom.
And that is, I don't want to say that's my pet peeve about, because when we've talked about supplementing family coverage, it's never been done in education. Well, we have young teachers leaving education because they have families, and it's $500 a month for a child. Well, that's ridiculous. You can't. So I think we need to change the model. That's my humble opinion. Yeah, 11 to 1,800. That's 20-something thousand a year. Yes, sir.
If we get one person to do a write-in, we don't have to pay for an election. If two people want to run, we pay for an election.
So I think you still have to do the election, because for the write-in, their name has to be written on a certain number of ballots to qualify.
I believe that's correct.
If there's a space on the ballot. you have to
Because
pay
I
for it.
want to say the write-in has to get the same number of votes that is required for signatures.
No.
I don't think so.
Because when I ran as a precinct committeeman years ago, I had to get the same number as signatures.
So Chairman Strake, Mrs. Wiley, we will have to pay for the write-in election, even if there's one, because they have to enter their name. Last time when that seat was open, we had no one running. We had 4 or 5 that submitted write-in candidates. Mr. Hutchinson was one of them. I believe he got about 350 some votes. The second runner-up was about 280. I don't remember the other 2, but they all lived within that district, and we had to pay for that write-in.
Okay,
So-
and if we don't get anybody to do a write-in, say we get 0, even though everybody's got a map now, then we go through the same thing that we did before.
An appointment.
For one.
One came on.
Mr. Orders.
We just
Yes.
leave it up to Mr. Watson.
And we have
No,
to,
we found, didn't we find candidates or?
Yeah, but he's selected.
Yeah, he does the final selection,
Yeah.
but the people, let's say that we find 3 people and they want, but we're after the
Write-in.
the 25th, after the write-in, then they would just come and interview the same as what we did before. And then they go to Watson and he makes the final decision.
And if we don't get anybody by the 25th, he just selects somebody.
And that's cheaper.
That was free.
Yes. Future agenda item, Mr. Kay?
Mrs. Markham, I know that we have students hither and yon about the nation in doing their national CTSO contests in the last week, this week, whatever. So as always, requesting results and
And sharing exciting moments.
All right. Hear anything else?
do you have anything?
Dr. Pingarelli, any agenda items? You were-
None for me tonight. Thank you very much.
All right. All right, so I think you have the future agenda items. That will move us on to item number 17. I am happy to adjourn us at 6:11.